Hello and welcome. Are we doing this? You're killing me. Hello and welcome to another episode of Spoken Voices. We hope that everyone is doing well. We hope that everybody's doing fine. 2022 is about to be in the rearview mirror. I believe it's December 28th, so a few days we're going to change years, and I hope that everybody remembers when they're writing it down not to put 2022 in there. So I hope everyone's year was prosperous and good, and we did new things, and we spent time with loved ones, and we just had a good time. And hopefully in 2033 things will get even better if we can kind of turn our heads from the negative stuff that's out there of last year and don't bring them into this year. We'd be doing ourselves a big favor. So today, since it's the end of the year, I just like to talk about certain things that people have talked to me about, especially recently. I was speaking to someone the other day, and they were talking about relationships and being married, being together as a couple. And it kind of struck me as really important that, you know, I come on here and I'll just give my perspective of it. And again, this is just my opinion of how I've lived my life. It seems to me recently, more so than in the past, with my mom and dad and stuff like that, relationships have evolved into something different than what I remember growing up and what I remember as I got older and got into relationships. Relationships now seems to be, for younger people, trying to get the other person to kind of convert into the person that they want them to be, which has always been kind of amazing to me, because I realized early on in relationships that I can never make somebody the person that I want them to be. And then as I got older, I realized something is that you fell in love with a person, or you got into a relationship with the person because of who that person was. Now, was your thought process, all right, I like this person, but I've got to get them to be who I want them to be, which is an impossibility. Because even if the person decides to say, okay, I got to do what this person wants me to do, or be the way this person wants me to be, to make them happy, you're not being honest with yourself. You can only be who you are. We strive to be better people, I hope, for the most part. We do, and we know what our shortcomings are. We know that there are certain things that we need to change about ourselves, not only for the betterment of a relationship, but for the betterment of who we are as people, to move us forward into having a happier life, living a happier life, you know. And I've come to realize that once you try to convert someone into your line of thinking, that person is no longer the person that you fell in love with, that you said, I want to be with if you get married for the rest of your life. Now, the funny thing about that is that I always wondered, do you really want somebody to think exactly like you? And I always say, where's the fun in that? What do you learn from somebody who's thinking the same way you do? You don't learn anything. You don't become more aware of other people, of other things, of other cultures and stuff like that. If you go, okay, I want to do this all the time, this is what I like. Prime example, I love sports. If my wife decided that, okay, I'm going to convert and I'm going to love sports too, I'm not going to do the things that I want to do or that I like, then all of a sudden I'm stuck in a world, or better yet, not even a world, I'm stuck in a bubble. I'm in a bubble that only that I don't want to let anybody else in, because I'm in my own little bubble, because now me and my wife are doing the same thing over and over again. I don't know about you guys, but that would be boring. I'd rather be with someone that I can learn different things from. Our expectations of other people tend to get out of whack a lot. We expect people to be a certain way, as opposed to letting a person be who they are. Because if they're living up to our expectations, they're truly not being individuals with their own thoughts, with their own likes and loves and the things that they like to do. And maybe if we gave them a chance and try to understand why these people act the way they do or who they are, then maybe we could do different things, step out of our bubble and learn and do things that we find are fun too. We tend to psychoanalyze our partners, trying to figure out why did they say that, as opposed to just asking the person to, why did you just say that, or why do you want to do this, or why are you upset, why are you happy, what makes you happy, and you may find out once you ask those questions, the things that make them happy, you can find happiness in it too. Even a place, say if you go on vacation and you say, well, in my case, I love warm weather. I can't stand this cold weather that we're having. That's a whole nother topic of conversation. But I love warm weather year round. And my thing was, I tried to tell my wife, I can't stand it up here. I want to go somewhere where it's warm, where I can get up in the morning and take walks without putting on 4 layers of clothes and freezing, and still freezing, or hitting the door and say, nope, I ain't going out there today. Not today. It's a little bit too cold. Because the last weekend, it was like 10 degrees. And my thought pattern is, what can I do in 10 degrees? Absolutely nothing but try to find some place that is warm. See, but that's me. And fortunately for me, my wife, she loves warm weather too, so that's a thing. But if you don't ask these questions, or better yet, if you don't listen to what someone is saying, if you don't try to compromise to a way to say, okay, let me hear what this person is saying, and even though I may not be in accord with exactly everything this person is saying, let me at least try to understand. And to listen is to understand. If you have any kind of cohesive thought pattern, if you listen to someone, hopefully you're smart enough to understand. And if you don't understand, keep asking questions. And although on the other end of that, if you keep asking someone the same question over and over again, they may get upset, but explain to them, why are you asking this question? And we realize, especially married couples, and after you have kids, those kids' idea of relationships basically fall in line with what they see as they're growing up, which is very concerning to me, because I've always, as I got older, I've always realized that I am a direct product, and my way of thinking is a direct product of my mother and father. I think I'm one of the most, I always say this, I'm one of the most fortunate people in the world, and I think anybody that grew up with a mother and father like mine are very fortunate, because I got to see two people who loved one another through thick and thin, through bad times and good times, who laughed and worried about one another, who took care of us. And on the outside looking in, as a child, I realized for me, that's what I wanted as I got older and started dating and started, getting into serious relationships. I wanted that type of relationship. And let me tell you, when you don't have it, when you basically think someone is going to be that way and they're not, of what you saw in your mother and father, you're smart enough, for the most part, to get out of that relationship. And that's what relationships are as you're growing up and you're young. I think a lot of people think that the first relationship they get in with someone is forever. And for the most part, it's not. I mean, those lucky enough to find the one on their first, from the get-go, and to go out there and to be young and stay with somebody since high school is beautiful. But in most cases, that's not the case. We go through different relationships until we find what is comfortable for us. And once you find that comfortable feeling, that comfortable place where you are with a person, you nurture it. You nurture it and you try to make it grow further. And the only way that you can do that is be understanding, listen, right? And being able to compromise on certain things. Nowadays, it seems like we don't want to compromise. We want to stick out our chest and say, this is what I want, and if I don't get this, I'm going to be really upset, and this is not going to work. But that's not how any relationship works. And going back to being a child, when you see compromise, when you see your parents being together, excuse me, on most things, and when they're not, they come to a happy middle ground, that's what you seek. Now, for the parents out there, when you come home and the first thing that your child see is two parents going at one another, no compromise, no laughing, always gloomy, do you realize that that's what most children will think relationships are? And we don't think about that as parents sometimes, and say what I project to my child is what they believe life is really like. An abusive household, where children see mother and father fighting physically, mentally, verbally. They believe, well, that's life. That's the way relationships are. So when they get into relationships, they figure, I will go and have arguments with my wife, with my girlfriend, and that's the way the world goes. Excuse me. But at the end of the day, it's not. That is not conducive to a healthy and hearty life. Now, you realize everything that we do is passed down through generations. And that means any positive stuff that we portray and we project out will probably be picked up by our children, our grandchildren, and their children. What do you want to put out in the world? What do you want your children and your grandchildren to see as your legacy? And so I say all this because, again, I see young people, and they're going through this thing, this relationship thing, and they seem that they can't find solid ground with one another. They can't find common ground with one another because one person wants one thing, one person believes one thing, and the other the complete opposite. And that's true with most relationships. Relationships that work is a relationship that you can look at and compromise and be understanding. If you understand, if someone tells you their background, if someone tells you the things they went through as a child, and you in turn tell them, you're getting to know this person. You know this person to the core of who they are. Now, what do you do with that information? Do you use that information against them? Do you say, no wonder you're acting crazy. You came from this, that, or the other thing. Or do you look at that person and say, I understand what you're saying, but that's not who I am. That's not what I'm trying to give you. I understand that your situation may have been a volatile situation in your family. You may not get along with your mother. You may not get along with your father, but I'm not either one of those people. I am an individual who happens to love you. Let's move on from here. Now, on the other hand of that, the person must be able to accept what you're saying. Now, if you portray yourself as something that you're truly not, and you're lying and you're telling somebody something that's not true, eventually the truth will come out. But if you're sincere in what you're thinking, if you're sincere in what you're telling that person, right, and the love that you have for that person can pull them out and change their way of thinking when it comes to relationships, that is a beautiful thing. Because at the end of the day, everybody on this planet should and needs to be loved. Love is not fighting constantly, verbally. That's not what love is. Love is constantly learning, caring, and moving forward. And that's the same kind of love that you give to your children. And you want your children to see that life is not strife and, and heartache and oh, it's so gloomy. It's so, you gotta do what you gotta do to live. And it's not fun. You gotta get up and you gotta work every day and you gotta do this. Yes, that is a part of life. But 90% of life should be enjoying the short period of time that we have here. And I say this constantly. We don't know what's going to happen within the next second of our lives. Why would we want to live our lives in misery? If we look at our lives and think that, my life is going to be, I'm going to start work at 18 years old and then work until I'm 65, 70 and stuff like that. And that's the whole gist of my existence. That's no existence at all. That's just being as opposed to living. And we have to give that to our children too. We have to give that positive thing to our children. I think my producer wants to come on stage with me as I'm looking at her. Hello, darling. How are you?
Hi, darling.
You want to join this conversation?
Yeah,
Should I move over?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to move over a little bit without falling on the floor.
Let's get excited here.
Let's get excited.
Hi, people.
Yes.
Look how bright it looks.
Yes. This is my producer, of course. Everyone knows her.
Yes.
This is Maribel Ramos Brooks.
Not everybody knows me.
Why? Anybody who watches the show knows.
Yeah. So what's going on, babe?
What do you mean, what's going on? You hear what I'm talking about?
Okay. I mean, yeah, but I wasn't really listening.
You wasn't listening? You was in the control room?
Yeah, I'm trying to control the room by myself.
Okay, so?
Director,
You got skills.
Producing it by myself.
You got skills, so what's the problem?
So I hear you talking about relationships.
Yes, very important.
Yes.
Very. Why are you making a face? Dude, you got something you want to tell me? Huh?
No. There's something that you did say that
What's
really
that?
caught my attention. It's important. This is a show that's been going on for how long now? Almost 4 years now?
No, 3 years. It's been exactly 3.
4, honey.
Going on 4, yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Starting 2023.
So it's not easy, folks, to be creative and to come up with ideas and have my husband sit here and be a wonderful host because honey, I think you're awesome. You're awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
What about
being here by myself?
What has that got?
With my husband.
Relate that to relationships. What do you think they are? What do you think? Anything that I just said, do you disagree with?
No. This is important because it's important how our children, it can affect them. And it's true what you said.
Yeah.
And I think the most important thing in a relationship is especially, you know, we've been together, wow, for how long now? Ooh,
Going on 14 years.
for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't easy in the beginning, but it's all about being kind to one another.
But,
You know,
but my thing is to
getting
you,
to know each other and growing.
right?
There's a lot of stuff that you taught me,
And a lot of stuff you taught me.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is this, right? You know, you said easy. I think that's one of the problems with young people, right? They think it's going to be easy. And not only do they think it's going to be easy, they want it to be easy, but it's not, because you're dealing with a whole nother human being.
Yeah.
And there is something that drew you to that human being. There's something about that person that you wanted to say, you know, especially if you get married.
Yeah.
You go, I want to spend the rest of my life with them. So how do you get into a relationship with somebody and then try to change them who they are? Because they're no longer the person. If they change, they're no longer the person that you fell in love with.
Well, I can only talk about my relationship with you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how we first met.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't change you because you are who you are, and I loved you because you're such a beautiful father. And, you know, you're an awesome husband.
Thank you, honey.
You know, you support me.
Mhm.
You support me in everything that I do.
Yeah.
And it was kind of hard for us in the beginning because I couldn't deal with you, and I didn't know you that well.
Of course not.
But I kind of realized one thing.
Mhm.
I kind of realized throughout the life, you know, our relationship, our courtship, and everything that we've gone through. It's all about me, you know.
Of course.
It's about how I felt and getting to know who I was, you know, and just looking inside of my soul, to put it that way, and figure out, okay, who am I, and what love am I giving you? You know,
Right.
what kind of love am I giving you? Because sometimes, I mean, for example, when I grew up as a child, I grew up trying to yearn and get love, and I pleaded for love from a dad who never acknowledged me.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up that way, you know, and I thought that was the kind of love that I needed to have when I became much older.
Right.
And it was something that I needed to look within myself and say, hold up, back up. Of course, I had to study a little bit, and of course, I went to therapy, but I kind of realized that I had to look inside of myself and say to myself, okay, what is love for me? You know, and I grew up, you know, trying to figure this out on my own.
Right.
You know, and it's not easy when you get involved with someone, because first and foremost, we're not perfect people.
No.
We're all gonna go through some situation in life where we need to look at each other and find out what is our dislikes and what is our likes. And it takes a lot. It's hard work.
It is.
You know, it's not something where you can just get up and go, because some people, you know, they can't deal with each other. But I always remember one thing which is very sacred to me, which I've learned when I got married at the time, where I had to figure out, okay, I got to remember our vows. And sometimes when we get married, we forget our vows, for better, for worse, sickness and health, rich or poor. So we need to remember those things, because those are the things that we need to interject in our lives when we go through certain things, you know. And I love you for who you are.
Right.
You know, I appreciate everything that you've
I
done for me
appreciate
and
that
for
you
the
appreciate it.
children.
Yeah.
And so it just takes a lot of maturity, and it's going to take a lot of time.
My thing is, before we leave, my thing is that
This is a touchy subject.
my thing is, if you have a good perception and a good understanding of who you are as a human being, as a person, this is me as a person. I know me. I know what I love. I know what I don't like. I know who I am. And if you have a good understanding of who you are as a human being, right, you can make anything work. You can make anything work. Because there's certain things that you won't do because you know who you are.
Right.
And you relay that to your partner, and you say, this is who I am. And if the partner's smart enough not to say, well, you may be that way, but I'm going to try to change you, because anybody who tries to change anyone is doomed to fail.
Yes.
Right? You can't change who a person is, and why would you? Again, I cannot emphasize this enough. The person that you're trying to change is the same person you fell in love with. You love that person for who they were. You cannot convert them to you.
For who they are.
Yes, you love the person when you fall in love with, you don't know who that person is, but there's something about it. I said that before.
What made you fall in love with me?
You're crazy. That's it.
Nice.
No, because you're a sweet person. You're a great mom. You know, you're a good person at heart.
I try.
And I need a good person in my life because I think that's important to be with someone who is a good human being.
Kids, that's important
yes.
too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because it's not an easy subject.
And unfortunately, you came out here late, so I'm going to have to end the show.
Show.
Yeah.
Okay, we got a couple of seconds here.
A couple of seconds, but I got to sign off.
I got this.
I got to sign. You going to sign off?
Yeah, let me sign off.
Sign off. As usual, we always say, guys, have a happy new year. We hope that it's prosperous and you have a beautiful new year coming up. But I always say this and always understand this. Man makes plans. God smiles. I hope we understand what I mean by that. Have a good one, and we'll see you again on Spoken Voices.